Connor James didn't expect to find a woman sobbing in the downpour, drenched from head to toe, sitting alone on a park bench with mascara streaks down her face and $1,000 heels sinking into the mud. He shielded his daughter with his cheap umbrella, clutching little Lila's hand as they hurried through the rain, trying to make it back to the rundown apartment they called home. But the sight of the crying woman stopped him cold. Something about the way she was trying to hold herself together like she was used to looking perfect, but tonight she'd just given up hit him square in the chest. "Daddy," Lila whispered, tugging his coat. "She's sad." Connor glanced down at his 7-year-old, her wide eyes full of concern. He looked back at the woman. She didn't even flinch at the thunder or the freezing rain. Her arms were wrapped tight around herself, her lips trembling. He hesitated, then sighed. "Stay close to me, okay?" They walked over. The woman didn't look up. "Hey," Connor said gently. "You okay?" She finally turned, startled. Her eyes were red, but behind them was something fierce, something proud. "I'm fine," she said quickly, wiping her face, though it didn't help much with the rain pouring down. "I'm just figuring things out." He offered his umbrella over her head. "You'll catch pneumonia sitting out here like this." She looked at him like he was from another planet. "Why are you being nice to me?" "Because you look like you need it," Connor said. Lila stepped forward. "You can come with us." "Daddy makes hot cocoa when I'm sad." The woman's lips twitched like she was trying not to cry again. "I'm Zia," she said finally, her voice cracking. "Zia Grant." "Connor," he replied. "And this is Lila. We don't live far. You can dry off, get warm. No strings." Zia looked like she was about to protest, but then another gust of wind hit, and she shivered. "Okay." Connor's apartment was nothing special. 2 bedrooms, peeling paint, and a heater that worked when it felt like it. But it was warm, and it smelled like cinnamon from the oatmeal cookies Lila had baked with him the day before. He handed Zia one of his old flannel shirts and a pair of sweatpants. They were comically big on her, but she didn't complain. She stared into the mug of cocoa like it was the first real comfort she'd had in weeks. "I don't usually do this," she said after a while. "Cry in the rain or follow strangers home?" "Both." Connor chuckled. "Yeah, well, I don't usually invite strange women into my apartment, but Lila liked you." Zia looked at Lila, who was drawing a picture of their 3 mugs on the coffee table. "She's amazing. She's everything," Connor said quietly. "Her mom left when she was 3. Haven't seen her since." Zia blinked, surprised. "So you're raising her alone?" "Every day. Wouldn't trade it." She looked at him differently then. Not like a stranger anymore. They didn't talk much after that. Zia curled up on the couch with a blanket, and Lila insisted they paint her nails with glitter polish. By the time Zia fell asleep, she looked peaceful. The next morning, she was gone. Connor found the folded blanket and empty mug on the table, and a note scribbled on a napkin. "Thank you. I needed that more than you know." Zia, he figured that was the end of it. 3 weeks passed. Connor went about his life, early shifts at the garage, packing Lila's lunch, budgeting every dollar. He didn't expect to see Zia again. But then she walked into the community center where he picked up Lila after school. Wearing jeans and a dark green coat, her hair up in a messy bun, Zia looked like any other woman, but he recognized her instantly. "Zia." He blinked. She smiled, nervous. "Hey, I've been thinking about you." "About Lila?" Connor narrowed his eyes, confused. "How did you find me?" "I asked around," she admitted. "I just wanted to say thank you. That night, I was in a really bad place. What you did, it mattered." He looked at her carefully. "You okay now?" "Better," she said, still figuring things out. Lila ran up then and gasped. "The rain lady." Zia laughed. "I guess that's me." Connor didn't know what possessed him, but he said, "Want to come over for dinner?" Zia hesitated. "I don't want to intrude." "You're not. Lila's already attached. Might as well make it official." Zia bit her lip, then nodded. "Okay. I like that." That night, she helped Lila with her math homework, and Connor watched them from the stove, something warm brewing in his chest. Zia kept coming back. Sometimes she brought soup. Sometimes she just showed up, sat on the couch with Lila and talked about silly things, like cartoons and glitter shoes. Lila adored her. And Connor, well, he was starting to, but he didn't know anything about her. "Where do you live?" he asked one night. "I'm in between places," she said vaguely. "What do you do?" "I used to work in finance." Took a break. Looking for what's next. It was all so vague, but she didn't lie. She just left things out. He never pried. She looked happier now. Her laugh came easier. Her eyes were brighter. And every time she looked at him, it lingered a little longer. Then came the night everything changed. They were walking home from the diner after a late dinner. Connor had just paid with quarters and crumpled bills. Zia had offered, but he refused. "I don't let guests pay," he said, grinning. "I'm not a guest anymore," she said softly. He stopped walking. The streetlight flickered above them. Rain started again, soft at first, then harder. Zia didn't move. Connor took a step closer. "You okay?" She looked up at him, her face wet, but not from the rain this time. "I lied," she whispered. He frowned. "About what?" "I'm not broke. I'm not looking for work. I'm a millionaire, Connor. I run a venture capital firm. My father left it to me when he died last year. I walked away from it because I hated what it turned me into." Connor stared at her. "You're serious?" She nodded. "I didn't want you to see me that way. I just wanted to be Zia. Not Zia Grant, who's worth $15 million. He didn't say anything for a long time. Then, "Why tell me now?" "Because I'm falling for you." And I couldn't keep lying. Connor exhaled, running a hand down his face. Zia stepped closer. "Please say something." He looked at her, really looked at her. "You think I care about money? I didn't want you to feel like you weren't enough." He took her hand. "Zia, you showed up in the rain, crying. And now you're here, loving my kid like she's yours. That's enough." Her breath caught. He smiled. "And for the record, I think I've been falling for you too." The rain poured harder. She kissed him anyway. Right there, under the streetlight, soaked to the skin, Zia kissed the poor dad who had saved her from more than just the rain. And neither of them looked back. Connor didn't sleep much after that kiss. It wasn't the kind of kiss you forget. It was the kind that rewrote things, the way you thought about someone, the way you looked at them, the way you let them in. He'd gone to bed with her taste still on his lips and his heart hammering like it didn't know what to do with itself. But now, with the morning pressing through the blinds and Lila humming in the kitchen as she poured milk into her cereal, the world was back to its usual rhythm. Except nothing really felt usual anymore. Zia had left early, but not without a note this time. Not a scribbled goodbye, but a folded piece of stationery, crisp, heavy paper, the kind you don't find in convenience stores. She'd written, "You deserve my truths, all of them. If you're ready for them, come find me." She'd left an address. Connor stared at it, the unfamiliar street name burning in his hand. It wasn't anywhere near their side of town. "Daddy, can I bring my art to school?" Lila asked, lifting a paper full of glitter and chaos. He blinked and smiled. "Of course. Just don't let Mrs. Palmer eat it." Lila giggled and ran off, and Connor folded the note into his wallet. The garage was slow that day. He changed oil, rotated tires, and tried not to think about the fact that Zia had been living two lives, one with him, and one with the world she'd come from. Truth be told, he didn't even know what her world looked like. So that night, after dropping Lila off at his neighbor's, the only woman he trusted to watch her, he took the subway to the address Zia had left. He expected something nice. What he didn't expect was a 5-story brownstone with a wrought iron gate and a doorman who eyed his beaten-up boots like they were a threat to national security. "Connor James," he said when the man asked for his name. The doorman's expression changed instantly. "Miss Grant said to send you up. Penthouse." The elevator alone was bigger than his kitchen. When the doors opened, it was like stepping into another universe. Cream-colored walls, gold fixtures, a view that stretched across the skyline with floor-to-ceiling windows. And in the middle of it all, barefoot in a silk blouse, was Zia. "You came," she said softly. Connor took a step inside, suddenly aware of the oil under his nails and the way his jacket smelled faintly of gasoline. "This is where you live?" She nodded. "Hasn't felt like home in a long time." He looked around. "It's beautiful. It's lonely," she admitted. "I used to fill it with people. Investors, colleagues, guests for charity galas. But none of them ever noticed when I wasn't okay." Connor turned to her. "I noticed." Zia walked over slowly. She didn't try to disguise the way she looked at him, not with pity, but with something raw. "I want you to see it all," she said. "Not just the girl who shows up in the rain." He nodded. "Show me." She led him through the penthouse, her office, where an entire wall was covered in whiteboards filled with startup names and figures, her library, where the books were worn from actual use, her bedroom, where the only personal touch was a small photo on her nightstand, her and an older man with kind eyes. "My father," she said when she saw him looking. "The one who left you the firm?" He built it from nothing, she said. Started out with $2,000 and a dream. That's why I couldn't walk away completely. I just needed to breathe. Connor sat down in an armchair that probably cost more than his rent. You're not what I expected. Disappointed? No, he said. Just trying to figure out how you fit into my world. Zia sat across from him. I've been wondering the same thing. They talked for hours, really talked. About his life before Lila. About her life before the money. She told him about boarding schools and cold dinners at long tables, about trying to prove herself in a room full of men who underestimated her. He told her about the moment he held Lila for the first time, terrified and awestruck, and how he built his world around her ever since. I don't want to lose this, Zia said finally. But I know it's not simple. Connor studied her. It doesn't have to be complicated either. She looked at him, hopeful. What do you mean? I don't care how many zeros are in your bank account. You're the same woman who painted glitter on my kid's toes and made her laugh like she hadn't in months. That's the version of you I know. The rest, I'll learn. Zia's eyes filled, and she looked away quickly, blinking them back. Connor stood. But I'm not going to lie. I don't belong here. Not like this. Then let me come to you, she said, rising too. Let me try living in your world for a while. He blinked. You want to work at the garage? No, she said lightly. Then her voice softened. But I want to know what your life feels like when you're not adjusting to mine. He didn't answer right away. Then he nodded. Okay. Come over tomorrow. It's Lila's birthday. Zia's face lit up. Really? Yeah. I was going to make spaghetti and let her stay up watching cartoons. Nothing fancy. I'll be there, she said. And I won't bring anything extravagant. He raised an eyebrow. Define extravagant. No ponies. No private chefs. Just me. Maybe a homemade cake if you'll let me use your oven. He grinned. Deal. The next day, Zia arrived with her hair in a ponytail and wearing sneakers. She carried a lopsided cake box and a wrapped gift that she swore hadn't broken the bank. Lila opened it to find a second-hand telescope, cleaned and polished until it gleamed. I remembered you talked about stars, Zia said. Lila hugged her so tight Zia almost dropped the cake. They ate dinner on the floor, used paper plates, and laughed until their sides hurt. Zia didn't flinch at the burnt garlic bread or the flickering overhead light. She helped wash dishes and dried them with a towel that had holes in it. Later, after Lila had fallen asleep with the telescope beside her bed, Connor walked Zia to the door. You survived, he said. I didn't just survive, Zia replied. I felt alive. He stepped closer. You're not just passing through, are you? No, she said. I'm building something. If you'll let me. He kissed her then, slower this time. Not in the rain. Not out of desperation. But because he couldn't not kiss her. She pulled back and smiled. I'll see you soon. You better. As she left, Connor looked around his apartment, the chipped counters, the old couch, the warmth that had settled in the air. It wasn't just his world anymore. And for the first time in a long time, that felt like a gift. It started with a phone call. Connor was elbow-deep under the hood of a battered sedan at the garage when his phone buzzed in his back pocket. He wiped his hands on a rag and stepped outside to answer, expecting it to be about Lila or maybe his landlord again complaining about late rent. But it was Zia. Her voice was calm, but there was an edge to it, a quiet urgency. Can you meet me tonight? There's something I need to show you. He glanced back at the shop where the other mechanics were winding down for the day. Everything okay? Yes. I want you to see where I came from. Connor agreed without hesitating. He'd already stepped into her world once, but the way she said it this time made it sound like he hadn't seen the whole picture yet. Later that evening, he dropped Lila off with Mrs. Halvorsen again and took the train out of the city. Zia had sent an address he didn't recognize, and when he arrived, he realized why. It wasn't the penthouse. It wasn't even in the city. It was a sprawling estate outside of town, hidden behind wrought iron gates and rows of cypress trees that lined the drive like guards. The house was made of stone and glass, elegant but cold, with long windows that reflected the darkening sky. Zia was waiting for him at the entrance, wearing a navy coat and boots dusted with gravel. Her hair was pulled back in a way he hadn't seen before, tight, precise. Every line of her posture was controlled. I grew up here, she said as he stepped out of the car. I haven't been back in over a year. Connor followed her inside. The place was beautiful, but it didn't feel lived in. Everything was pristine, too pristine. The scent of polished wood and fresh flowers filled the air, but there were no personal touches, no warmth. It was like walking through a museum. My father built this long before he made his first million, she said as they entered a long hallway lined with framed awards and newspaper articles. He never let me forget where we came from, but he also never let me forget where we were going. Everything had a purpose, even me. Connor slowed by a portrait of a younger Zia standing beside her father, both dressed in formal wear, smiling for the camera. Her eyes were the same, but her expression was different, guarded. "Did you ever want something else?" he asked. Zia paused at the foot of a grand staircase. "I didn't know I could." They moved into a sitting room with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves and a fireplace that hadn't seen fire in years. She gestured toward a leather armchair, and he sat while she moved to a cabinet and pulled out a small wooden box. This was his, she said, handing it to him. Everything he valued: his will, his letters, his notes from meetings he kept in here. Connor opened it slowly. Inside were handwritten notes on yellowing paper, a gold pocket watch, and a photograph of a woman he didn't recognize. "My mother," Zia said softly, answering the question before he could ask. "She died when I was 9. After that, it was just him and me. He poured everything into the business and expected me to do the same." Connor set the box down. "You don't need to show me this to prove anything." "I'm not trying to prove anything," she said. "I'm trying to explain why it took me so long to walk away. And why I'm scared of what happens next. You think I'm going to suddenly care about all of this?" He gestured around the room. "Because I don't. Not in the way you think. It's not just about the money," she said. "It's what it does to people. What it did to me. I used to walk into rooms and wonder what angle everyone had. I stopped trusting people. I stopped believing anyone saw me as more than a checkbook." Connor leaned forward. "I see you. I've seen you since the first night. You were drenched and falling apart, and you still tried to hold on to your pride." "That's the woman I see." Zia's eyes filled, but she didn't look away. "You didn't have to bring me here," he said gently. "But I'm glad you did. Because now I understand what you left behind." She reached for his hand. "I don't want to live in a world where I have to choose between who I was and who I want to be." "Then don't," he said. "Build something new. With me." For a long moment, she didn't say anything. Then she nodded, and the tension in her shoulders eased. On the drive back to the city, Connor watched her from the passenger seat as she navigated the winding roads like she'd done it 1,000 times before. But her grip on the wheel was looser now, more relaxed. Like she'd finally let go of something. They didn't go back to the penthouse. Instead, Zia asked if she could stay at the apartment again. Not just for the night. For a while. Connor hesitated. "You sure you're ready for paint that peels and a heater that makes noises like it's possessed?" She smiled. "I'd take that over silence any day." The transition wasn't seamless. Zia tried to help with laundry and collapsed the drying rack. She attempted to make pancakes and set off the smoke alarm. She tripped over Lila's toys and once accidentally bought a week's worth of groceries that required refrigeration they didn't have space for. But she laughed. Every time. And so did Connor. Lila took to her with a kind of certainty that no one questioned. She started asking Zia to braid her hair in the morning, to help with her drawings, to read the bedtime story even when Connor was right there. One night, after Lila had gone to sleep, Connor found Zia sitting on the fire escape, looking out at the skyline. He joined her, handing over 2 mugs of cocoa. She took a sip, then glanced at him. "There's something else." He raised a brow. "I got a call today. From the board. They want me back. Not as CEO, but as executive chair. It's mostly advisory, but it's high profile. And it's public." Connor set his mug down. "What does that mean for us?" "It means we'd be in the spotlight. People would start asking questions. About you. About Lila. About this apartment. Everything." He stayed quiet for a minute. Then, "Do you want to go back?" "I want to make a difference," she said. "But not if it costs me this." Connor thought about it. About Lila's drawings taped to the fridge. About Zia in his shirt, trying to understand how to use a manual can opener. About the way she looked at him like she'd finally found somewhere to land. "Then we figure it out," he said. "Together." She nodded slowly. "I want them to know who you are. And I want you to be proud of me, not afraid of what being with me means." "I'm proud of you already," he said. And he meant it. She leaned into him, resting her head on his shoulder, and they sat in silence while the city pulsed around them. The next morning, Zia called the board and accepted the offer with conditions. Connor didn't ask what they were. He knew she'd made space for him. That weekend, She brought him to a benefit gala, her first public appearance since stepping away from the business. She wore a sleek, understated black dress and introduced him as her partner. Not her date, not someone she was seeing. Her partner. The room was full of powerful people, but Zia didn't flinch. She held Connor's hand and introduced him with the kind of steady pride that silenced every whisper. At one point, a man in an expensive suit tried to corner her with a backhanded compliment about her new lifestyle. Zia didn't miss a beat. "Connor is the best man I've ever known," she said. "And if you can't see that, you're not worth my time." Connor didn't say anything as they walked out later until they were alone in the car, and she reached for his hand. He brought it to his lips and kissed her knuckles, one by one. "You didn't have to do that," he said. "I wanted to." The city lights blurred past the windows as they drove, but all he could see was her. And for the first time, he wasn't wondering if he belonged in her world. He knew they were building one of their own. Connor stood in the back of the classroom, arms folded over his chest, watching Lila beam as her art project was pinned to the bulletin board at the front of the room. Mrs. Palmer clapped politely, and the other parents offered distracted smiles, already checking their phones or discussing summer camp schedules. But Connor didn't care. His daughter was proud of herself, and that was worth more than anyone's approval. Zia stood beside him, her fingers laced with his. She wore a simple navy coat and jeans, blending in easily, though everyone in the room recognized her. She'd been on the cover of a business magazine last week, and word traveled fast in a small school. A few parents whispered, but Zia pretended not to notice. "Your kid's got talent," a man said, walking over. "That drawing of the stars? It's incredible." "Thanks," Connor said, his tone cautious. "Must be nice," the man continued, glancing at Zia. "Having someone like her helping out. Bet that telescope wasn't cheap." Zia turned to him without missing a beat. "It was secondhand. I cleaned it myself." The man blinked, caught off guard. Connor gently stepped in. "We're just here for Lila. Everything else is background noise." They left shortly after, Lila skipping ahead of them on the sidewalk, humming a song she'd made up. As they reached the apartment building, she darted toward Mrs. Halvorson, who was waiting by her door with a tray of muffins. Zia paused near the bottom of the stairs, her gaze lingering on the uneven bricks and rusted railing. "I've been thinking," she said quietly, "about what it would look like if we took the next step." Connor looked at her, expression unreadable. "You mean moving in together?" "No," she said. "I mean something more permanent." He waited. Zia took a breath. "I bought a building. Not a penthouse. Not a luxury suite. Just a 3-flat walk-up in a good part of town. Needs work, but it's got space. A backyard. A real kitchen. I want us to live there. Together." Connor didn't answer right away. He looked up at their current place: chipped paint, a leaky gutter, the familiar creak of a window that never quite shut all the way. Then he looked at her. "You trying to rescue me again?" he asked, a tease in his voice. Zia shook her head. "I'm trying to build something with you. Not for you. This isn't about charity. It's about building a life." He studied her carefully, then nodded once. "Let me see it first." They drove out that weekend, and true to her word, the place wasn't flashy. The floors creaked, the windows stuck, and the plumbing needed updates. But the sunlight poured into the living room in the late afternoon, and the backyard had a crooked swing set left by the previous owners. Lila ran around the yard like it was a castle, yelling something about space adventures. Connor watched her from the porch, hands in his pockets. "It's got good bones." Zia smiled. "So do we." They moved in a month later. Zia didn't hire a team. She packed her own boxes, painted the walls herself, and learned how to fix a leaky faucet with Connor guiding her through every step. He taught her how to reseal a window, and she taught him how to make risotto without burning the bottom of the pot. They argued over wall colors and where to hang Lila's paintings, but none of it stuck. Every disagreement ended with laughter or a paint fight. One night, after Lila had fallen asleep on the couch with a flashlight still tucked in her hand, Connor found Zia on the back steps, staring up at the stars. He joined her, passing her a blanket. "You always find the sky. I used to feel like I was always reaching for something," she said, pulling the blanket over her knees. "Now I just want to be still. With you." He watched her quietly, then reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small box. Zia blinked. It's not a diamond," he said quickly. "It's a ring I made in my spare time. Steel and silver. Took weeks." She opened it slowly. Inside was a simple band, smooth and elegant, with a tiny engraving inside 3 stars. Her voice broke. You remembered. One for each of us, he said. You, me, and Lila. You don't have to say yes. I just wanted you to know that if I ever got the chance, I'd ask. Zia looked at him, eyes shining. Connor, I don't need anything more than this. This house. This life. You. He held her gaze. So. She slipped the ring on, the metal catching the moonlight. Ask me properly. Connor stood, took both her hands, and knelt. Zia Grant, he said. You changed my life without even trying. You walked into it crying and left it burning bright. Will you marry me? She didn't hesitate. Yes. The wedding was small. Just family, close friends, and a few of Zia's colleagues who had proven themselves loyal. Lila wore a white dress with silver stars stitched along the hem and walked her father down the aisle with her hand in his. They held the ceremony in the backyard of the new house, with fairy lights strung between the trees and a homemade arch Zia and Connor had built together. As they exchanged vows, there wasn't a dry eye in the crowd. Zia went first. I once thought love was about finding someone who fit into your world. But then I met you, and I realized real love is about building a world together, one that's messy, unpredictable, and more beautiful than anything money could ever buy. Connor followed. You didn't just love me. You loved my daughter like she was yours. And you never once treated our life like it was beneath you. You made it yours. That's more than I ever dreamed of. They kissed beneath the stars, with Lila cheering loudest. Afterward, there was dancing under the string lights, laughter echoing through the yard, and music played from an old speaker that cut out every few songs. No one cared. Zia danced barefoot in the grass, spinning Lila around until they both collapsed in a heap of giggles. Connor watched them, artful, then joined them, pulling both into his arms. Later that night, once the guests had gone and Lila had fallen asleep with cake crumbs still on her cheek, Zia and Connor lay on the porch swing, wrapped in a blanket. Zia rested her head on his chest. You still surprised I cried in that park? He laughed softly. Every day. I never thought the woman who changed my life would arrive soaking wet and furious at the world. She tilted her head to look up at him. And now I thank the rain. She smiled, then closed her eyes, the rhythm of his heartbeat steady beneath her ear. In the quiet, the stars above blinked softly, and the life they'd built imperfect, honest, and full of heart unfolded around them like a promise kept. And for the first time in a long time, everything felt exactly as it should. Lila tugged at the hem of her new dress blue, with tiny constellations stitched along the skirt as she stepped carefully down the hallway toward the living room. Her hair was pinned with silver clips, and despite her usual aversion to anything remotely formal, she held her posture like she was walking onto a stage. Connor adjusted the cuffs of his shirt, watching her from the archway. You look like the sky tonight. She wrinkled her nose. That's a weird compliment. It's a dad compliment, he replied, bending down to straighten her collar. Which means it's the best kind. Zia appeared from the bedroom, slipping on a pair of earrings as she moved. Her dress was simple but stunning deep violet, with a neckline that softly curved along her collarbones and a slit that revealed just enough leg to make Connor momentarily forget how to breathe. You're sure about this? She asked, reaching for her clutch. We don't have to go. We could stay home, order Thai, and let Lila convince us candy counts as dinner. I already promised Mrs. Halvorson she could babysit tonight, Connor said. She made brownies. We're not getting out of this. Lila perked up. The ones with marshmallows? Only the best for you, Zia said, leaning down to kiss her cheek. We'll be back before midnight. But you're going to a fancy thing, Lila replied with a dramatic sigh. You'll probably be gone forever. Connor scooped her up. I survived 6 years of bedtime routines. I'll survive a gala. Zia watched them, something quiet and full blooming behind her eyes. Despite the heels and the makeup, she looked softer tonight, like something had shifted permanently inside her. They arrived at the event, a fundraiser spotlighting local initiatives Zia had recently backed personally. The old Zia might have walked in with practiced poise and a rehearsed smile. But this Zia entered with Connor at her side and no need for performance. She greeted people she knew, introduced Connor naturally, and when a journalist tried to corner her about her return to society, she answered with a clear voice. I never left. I just changed direction. Connor kept close but didn't hover. He watched the way she navigated the room with purpose, how she didn't hesitate to correct people who misunderstood her intentions. She was still a powerhouse, but now she wasn't hiding behind it. Later in the evening, when the speeches began, the host called Zia to the stage. She looked surprised, then composed herself as if she'd expected it all along. As she stepped up to the microphone, her gaze swept the room then landed on Connor. I used to think success only looked one way, she began. Corner offices. Stock valuations. Applause from people who barely knew me. But then I found something better. I found a life that doesn't require pretending. I found love that doesn't expect perfection. And for the first time, I'm building something that's not just profitable, it's personal. There was a pause, followed by a smattering of applause. But Connor didn't clap. He just watched her and felt something inside him settle, like the final piece of a puzzle had finally slid into place. She stepped down and returned to him, threading her fingers through his. "You didn't tell me you were a public speaker now," he said. She leaned in, her voice low. "Only when I've got something real to say." They left early, slipping out before the final toast. The city was quiet in that in-between hour where the night hadn't quite ended, but the next day hadn't begun. They walked slowly, fingers intertwined, heels in her hand, her bare feet padding along the concrete like she belonged to every version of this city. "I didn't know how to say it before," Zia murmured, "but I think I love you more because of your life. Because of how steady it is. How you never make me feel like I need to be anyone other than exactly who I am." Connor stopped walking. "I didn't fall for your money. Or your name. I fell for the woman who sat in the rain because she didn't know where else to go and still had the courage to get back up the next morning." She looked at him, her eyes glinting beneath the streetlight. "We've come a long way." He nodded. "And I'd go even further." The weeks after the gala passed with a rhythm that felt like home. Not perfect, there were late nights and forgotten groceries and the occasional argument about who left the tools in the garden, but it was real. Lila flourished, her drawings more imaginative than ever, now filled with rockets and planets and two stick figures holding hands under starlight. Zia's role on the board became less about image and more about impact. She started mentoring young entrepreneurs, especially women, and hosted workshops in their neighborhood. She didn't wear heels to those. She wore sneakers and brought brownies, and Connor swore more than once he saw people leave those sessions looking changed. One evening, as spring drifted into early summer, Zia sat on the back steps with a stack of papers in her lap. She was barefoot, a pencil tucked behind her ear, and her reading glasses slipping down her nose. Connor emerged from the kitchen with 2 lemonade glasses. He set one beside her and sat down. "What's that?" "Plans for a community center," she said. "I want a fun one here. For kids. For families who don't have a place to go after school. I want Lila to grow up in a neighborhood that believes in its people." He looked at her, admiration clear. "You're not doing this out of guilt, right?" She shook her head. "I'm doing it because I can. And because I finally know what matters." He reached over and tipped her chin up. "You matter." She leaned into his touch. "And so do you." They didn't need grand declarations anymore. Every day was a declaration. Every load of laundry, every shared meal, every bedtime story was proof that they'd chosen each other. And that choice never wavered. A year passed. The house had new paint, now soft sage green with white trim, and a swing set that no longer leaned like it might collapse. A small flower garden bloomed along the walkway, planted by Lila and watered obsessively. Inside, the walls were covered in framed family photos, most of them candid. Connor asleep on the couch with Lila curled on his chest, Zia laughing mid-sentence, flower on her cheek. A photo of all 3 of them in front of the telescope Lila had outgrown but refused to give away. On the anniversary of the day they met, Zia surprised Connor with a gift. Not a watch. Not cufflinks. Just a framed copy of the napkin she'd left behind that first night. The original had faded, but she'd recreated it by hand. He stared at it for a long moment. "You kept this." "I never forgot what you gave me," she said. "A place to fall apart." He pulled her into his arms. "And now I have a place to grow." He kissed her, slow and certain, the kind of kiss that didn't ask for anything, it simply promised everything. That night, they sat on the porch swing as the stars came out. Lila was asleep inside, her bedroom glowing faintly with fairy lights. The breeze carried the scent of lilacs, and the soft hum of crickets filled the silence between them. Zia curled into Connor's side. "You ever think about how none of this was supposed to happen?" He brushed her hair back. "No. I think it was always supposed to happen. We just didn't know it yet." They stayed there long after the sky turned black, wrapped in each other, in the soft warmth of a life they'd built from nothing but kindness, second chances, and the kind of love that doesn't ask you to change, but makes you want to grow. And in that quiet, starlit moment, there was no doubt this wasn't the end of something. It was the beginning of everything.